You're not addicted to the drug. You're addicted to escaping your pain. That's the truth no one wants to talk about. Most people think addiction is about getting high, losing control, making bad choices. But that's not it. Addiction is not the problem. It's the solution, a way to survive something you never knew how to face. Loneliness, abuse, emotional emptiness. Gabor Maté says, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. Because no one wakes up and chooses to destroy themselves. They do it to feel okay, even just for a moment. If you've ever felt like something inside you is too heavy, if you've used anything just to feel normal, this video is for you. In this video, I'm not just talking about addiction. I'm showing you what's underneath it, the hidden pain, the childhood wounds, the emotional disconnect, and why healing has nothing to do with willpower and everything to do with understanding. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't see addiction the same way again. Gabor Maté has worked with addicts for over 30 years, in hospitals, in rehab centers, on the streets, and one thing became clear. Addiction is not about choice, it's about pain. He says, nobody wakes up and decides to ruin their life. People use drugs, alcohol, food, work, even relationships to escape something inside, something they can't name, but they feel it every day. It could be childhood neglect, abuse, loss, or simply never feeling seen, never feeling safe. Maté explains, addiction is not the disease, it's the symptom. It's the body and mind screaming, I can't take this anymore. I need to feel something else. Even if it's just for a while. The addict isn't chasing a high, they're chasing relief. Relief from stress, from shame, from silence. And if we only look at the behavior, we miss the wound that caused it. That's why Maté says, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. Every addict is trying to escape something, not just the world, but themselves. Addiction is not about chasing pleasure. It's about running from pain. It's about avoiding thoughts you don't want to face, feelings you don't know how to handle. The substance becomes a shield. It blocks the anxiety, the memories, the emptiness. For a few hours, you feel okay. You feel nothing. And sometimes, nothing feels better than pain. Gabor Maté says, addiction is not about the drug. It's about the emotional state that makes the drug feel necessary. It's about survival. It's about self-regulation when nothing else works. And it's not just heroin or alcohol. People escape through work, through their phones, through food, through status, whatever gives them relief, even if it slowly destroys them, because the brain doesn't want to be high. It just wants to stop hurting. Gabor Maté says, if you want to understand addiction, you have to go back to childhood, back to where the pain began. He found that almost every addict he worked with had experienced some form of trauma as a child, not always physical abuse. Sometimes it was emotional neglect. Sometimes it was growing up without safety, without love, without being seen. Children are not born addicts. They learn to disconnect from themselves because staying connected was too painful. A child who is punished for crying learns to stay silent. A child who is ignored learns to feel invisible. And that child grows up still carrying the pain, still searching for something to make it go away. The drug, the bottle, the screen. It's not about getting high. It's about finally feeling something or nothing, whichever hurts less. This is what Maté calls the core wound, the early break in connection. And until that wound is seen and felt, addiction will always find a way to return. And when a child grows up in pain, they learn to hide who they are. They stop showing emotion. They stop asking for love. They become who they need to be to survive. Gabor Maté calls this the creation of the false self, a version of you built to stay safe, to be accepted, to avoid being hurt again. You laugh when you're not okay. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay strong even when you're falling apart. The world sees someone functional, but inside, you're disconnected, numb, empty. And that disconnection becomes the real addiction. You don't just lose touch with others. You lose touch with yourself. The drug doesn't just numb the pain, it helps you feel like yourself again. Because without it, you don't know who you are until you face the pain behind that false self. The addiction will always feel necessary, because without it, you feel nothing, and that nothing is terrifying. Most people think addicts are weak. They say it's a lack of discipline, a failure of willpower, but that's not true. Gabor Maté explains, the addicted brain is not broken. It's wounded. It's been shaped by stress, by fear, by early emotional pain. When a child grows up in a chaotic or neglectful home, their brain chemistry changes. the systems meant to handle stress, connection, self-control. They don't develop properly. So later in life, that same person struggles to feel calm, to feel safe, to feel enough. The drug doesn't just feel good. It balances the brain. It gives them what life never gave them: relief, focus, connection, a sense of peace. That's why you can't shame someone out of addiction, because it's not a choice. It's a survival pattern. It's a way the brain learned to cope with pain. And unless you heal the injury underneath, the behavior will keep coming back. No matter how strong the person tries to be, society looks at addicts with judgment. They're called criminals, failures, losers. But no one asks what happened to them. No one listens to the pain underneath. Gabor Maté says, we punish the behavior, but we ignore the wound. We build prisons instead of healing spaces. We offer shame instead of compassion. When someone uses a drug, we say they're weak, but we don't ask why they needed it, what they were running from, what they never received. People say, just stop, just get clean, just fix your life. But addiction isn't a switch. It's a response to pain that never had a voice. We don't shame people for bleeding. So why do we shame people for coping, even if their coping looks messy? The truth is, most addicts needed love long before they needed treatment. They needed someone to say, I see your pain, and it makes sense. Until we learn to see the human behind the habit, we'll keep treating symptoms and ignoring the cause. Gabor Maté says addiction isn't about pleasure. It's about connection, or more accurately, the absence of it. Every addict is trying to bond with something, a substance, a behavior, a feeling, because somewhere along the way, they lost connection with people, with love, with themselves. Human beings are wired for connection. When that connection is broken, the brain looks for substitutes, for something that feels like comfort, something that feels like home. That's why addicts go back to the same pattern. Not because they love the drug, but because it gives them something familiar, something predictable, even if it's painful. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. It's connection. Real connection, where you can be seen, heard, held, without needing to hide. When people feel safe, they heal. But when they feel judged, they retreat deeper into the thing that numbs them. That's why healing starts, not with fixing the addict, but with rebuilding the connection they never had. Addiction doesn't start with you. It often starts long before you were born. Gabor Maté explains, trauma is passed down, not just through stories, but through behavior, through silence, through emotional absence. A parent who never felt safe can't teach safety. A parent who was never heard struggles to listen, and a child raised in that environment learns to survive, not to feel. Many addicts come from families where pain was never named, where emotions were shut down, where love had conditions or was missing entirely. That pain doesn't disappear. It moves through generations until someone feels it and breaks the cycle. Addiction becomes the signal, the warning sign that something in the family system needs attention, needs healing. You're not just fighting your own battle. You're carrying pain that was never yours to hold. But now, you have the chance to end it. Healing yourself is how the pain stops passing forward. When we hear the word addiction, we think of drugs, alcohol, gambling. But Gabor Maté says, addiction goes far beyond that. You can be addicted to work, to success, to shopping, to your phone, to people's approval. Addiction is not about what you use. It's about why you use it. Anything that gives you short-term relief and creates long-term harm can become an addiction. Some people numb with heroin, others numb with likes on a screen. The behavior looks different, but the root is the same: pain, stress, emotional disconnection. The workaholic is running, just like the alcoholic. The overthinker is escaping, just like the drug user. We live in a society that rewards certain addictions. It praises productivity, it encourages distraction, it sells comfort, and calls it success. But Maté reminds us, even the most normal-looking life can be built on quiet suffering, on a deep need to not feel. So the question is not, are you an addict? The real question is, what are you using to avoid yourself? Gabor Maté says, you don't start healing by getting rid of the addiction. You start by understanding what made it necessary. Most people focus on stopping the behavior, but the behavior is not the root. The pain is the wound that came before the drug, before the craving, before the shame. Healing begins when you stop asking, what's wrong with me, and start asking, what happened to me? Addicts don't need more guilt. They don't need lectures. They need safety. They need space to feel what they've been avoiding for years. That means facing fear, facing memories, facing emotions that were buried, not because they're weak, but because they never had help. Maté says healing is not about control. It's about compassion. Not just from others, but from yourself. When you stop fighting the addiction and start listening to it, you realize it's been trying to protect you all along. Real healing happens when a person feels safe enough to feel their pain without running from it. Healing isn't about stopping the habit. It's about facing what the habit was hiding. Gabor Maté says, addiction is never random. There's always a story behind it. A moment, a memory, a feeling too big to handle. Most people never go back to that place because it hurts. It brings up fear, shame, loneliness. So they run again and again. But healing demands courage. Not to fight the addiction, but to sit with the wound underneath it. That might mean remembering the things you tried to forget. It might mean letting yourself cry for the first time in years. It might mean feeling the anger you pushed away as a child. The wound is not your fault, but it became your burden. And now you have the chance to face it, not to destroy it, but to finally understand it. Maté reminds us, you don't heal by pretending you're fine. You heal by being honest with yourself, even if it breaks you open. Because once you touch the real wound, you don't need the escape anymore. Gabor Maté says, the real goal isn't just sobriety, it's wholeness. Addiction disconnects you from the world, but before that, it disconnects you from yourself. You stop trusting your feelings. You stop hearing your needs. You become someone you don't recognize. Someone who's just trying to get through the day. Healing means coming back to the person you were before the pain, before the silence, before the mask. It means learning to sit with your emotions without numbing them. It means asking yourself, what do I feel? What do I need? What did I never get that I still search for? Maté says the process is slow and it's not always pretty. But each time you feel something real without escaping, you grow stronger. Reconnection isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about showing up for yourself, even when it's hard. Because the moment you stop running and start listening, that's when the real you begins to return. Gabor Maté says, no one heals through punishment. People heal through love, through safety, through being seen without judgment. Most addicts grew up without that kind of love. Love that accepts, not just when you're good, but even when you're broken. When someone is drowning, you don't yell at them to swim. You reach in, you hold them, you remind them they're not alone. That's what compassion does. It creates the space where healing becomes possible. Maté says, only when compassion is present will people allow themselves to see the truth. That truth might be painful, but when you're not being judged, you can face it. You can sit with it. You can move through it. Whether you're helping someone you love or trying to heal yourself, start with compassion, because healing doesn't happen through force. It happens through understanding. You don't need to be perfect to heal. You just need to feel safe enough to stop pretending. Addiction is not a moral failure. It's a response to pain. It's a survival strategy that makes sense when nothing else feels safe. Gabor Maté teaches us, you were never addicted to the substance. You were addicted to escaping yourself, to avoiding the wound, the silence, the emptiness. And now, you don't need more shame. You need awareness. You need to understand that your pain matters, that your story has a weight, that your healing is possible. The opposite of addiction is not willpower. It's connection to others and to the real you, the one buried beneath the fear, the one that never stopped hoping someone would understand. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're human. And what happened to you was never your fault. But what you do next, that part is yours. And if you're ready to stop running, to face the pain, to reconnect with the truth inside you, then this is the beginning, not the end.